Welcome to the 19th Hole Golf Show. I'm Ryan Ballengee. Great to have you with us. Rich Lerner is our guest, Golf Channel legend and author of a new book, Aren't You That Golf Guy? Doglegs and Detours from a Life in the Game. And before we started recording this, I saw this morning that you had posted the first run of the book is sold out. It's sold out on Amazon. What did you expect in writing a book in terms of how it would be received? And are you somewhat surprised that so many people are curious about this really cool life you've had in the sport?
Ryan, thanks for having me on. Hard to say if I'm surprised. I was just relieved to get it done and make my deadline with a publisher. And there were a lot of sleepless nights trying to put this thing together. It was a long time coming. So I'm thrilled that people have reacted the way they have. We get a second print out there, get it into people's hands. And I think, people are enjoying it. It's funny in spots, penetrating, different points. And it was an easy read, I think, too. People's habits have changed, obviously. I joked when I finished, and, we had like 110 chapters, which seems like a lot, but most are short, and it kind of scrolls. It's like scrolling Instagram, which is what so many people are doing these days. So I'm thrilled, obviously, and I got a really nice boost from my colleagues at Golf Channel Tuesday, the week of the U.S. Open. To my surprise, I didn't know it was coming. They did a really nice sort of feature, and they tried it out. Some players and my own two sons, Jack and Jesse, with some nice things to say, and I think people reacted to that. And maybe it's a little bit of word of mouth. But in all, it's a good time. It's riotous in spots. It's definitely a departure. I think maybe there's a little bit of a surprise in that it's not the Rich from the live from desk in most spots. It's is loose. This is Rich that my colleagues know in the compound. Cutting it up, having a good time, telling a story, a funny story, and I think that's what you'll see in the book, and I think that people are reacting to. But it's been fun, Ryan.
How did you try to pare down all the anecdotes that make up this book into question. What made the cut and what didn't, and kind of sort out the funny and not funny?
That's a good question. Curating all of my material was probably the biggest challenge, and how to lay it out, where to start, where to end, what makes the cut and what doesn't make the cut. Why did I go with, for example, Sean McKeel, a chapter called Too Heavy to Carry, but not Greg Norman? I had plenty of material on Greg Norman, who's a bigger name. I thought the Sean McKeel story was more important, oddly enough, and spoke to a side of professional golf that I've seen through the years, in that players never feel satisfied. In McKeel's case, he had one of the greatest shots in the history of the sport. Granted, it was his only win, 2003 PGA Championship at Oak Hill in Rochester, New York. But it's players chasing it from that point on, and never being satisfied, always being told that you haven't done enough. And there's this almost poverty that players carry with them that I've seen through the years. And it's not just a McKeel who only won one time. Rory would tell you the same thing. How is it that a guy who was and is the second best at his profession, who's worth probably close to $1 billion, up until the point that he won the 25 Masters, could be seen as having fallen short? Yeah. Only at the highest levels of professional sport could that be the case. Greg Norman is a great example. I mean, in the McKeel story, there is a little bit of Norman in this, never satisfying the press or the public, and in some cases even themselves. Norman was number one in the world for 331 weeks, and yet his legacy is what, Ryan? How would you describe Greg Norman's legacy?
Saturday Slam, 96 Masters.
There you go. Didn't do enough. Came up short. That's the life that they live. That's what I wanted to convey with Sean McKeel. So that's why he's in. And one of the themes through the book is this vulnerability that in my 30 years I've seen in these figures that we have mythologized, lionized, romanticized. They are just people, regular people in many cases, with this one supreme skill. But they struggle in many other aspects of life in the same way that you and I might. And I wanted to convey that because that's been my experience, whether your name is Sean McKeel or Tom Weiskopf, who struggled to escape the enormous shadow of fellow Buckeye Jack Nicklaus, and then had his own battles with alcohol, but found peace later in his life. And I met with him in the mountains of Montana. So whether your name Sean McKeel, Tom Weiskopf, Tiger Woods, Phil Mickelson, Rory McIlroy, keep going. It is about this sort of shared vulnerability, our capacity to change, and then the other through line is how absurdly hilarious this game can be, and a life in the sport can be. In my case, having grown up at my dad's driving range and at the modest club my folks belonged to, I have one foot in kind of the working class driving range world and another in the country club world. So I was introduced to all of these oddball characters that you'll meet in the book. Shim the Furrier, Frank the foul-mouthed old pro who dispensed all the lessons to a group of teenage boys that worked at my dad's range through the butt end of an unfiltered Camel. There's Lou the security guard who was on loan from the local prison as part of a work release program. He kept a watch over the driving range on busy nights. It's Elmer Hertzmark, who was my partner in the first tournament I ever played in, which is the better ball at my dad's club. I was 15, he was 67. He's introduced in a really funny chapter called Talcum Powder and Aqua Velva. That's the introduction for a 15-year-old boy, that would be me, to the inner sanctum of any proper club, and that's the men's locker room. So tons of characters, and then my 30 years in the game, but true to the subtitle, it's Dog Legs and Detours from a Life in the Game. I do veer in some cases wildly. So you get a chapter called The Samuel L. Sighting at St. Andrews. That's about Samuel L. Jackson. Golf Claps with Will Ferrell. That's down at Amen Corner. Sexiest Man Alive, Matthew McConaughey. There's a chapter on Bill Murray. I follow him at Pebble Beach. There's a chapter on Brandel called Brandel Breaking Windows. Chapter on Paul McGinley called Irishman. So I'm bobbing and weaving, always coming back to Tiger. Tiger is the principal figure of my 30 years. I arrived at Golf Channel just as Tiger was on his moonshot and taking everybody with him in 1997. So it follows the arc of Tiger's story, the rise, which is in the section called Millennium Man. The fall, picking up the pieces, is that section. The redemption story. It went to press before his latest incident. Similarly, it went to press. The book did before the latest turn in Phil's story. But what you read about these two men is relevant. And as you read what I wrote in 2010 as Tiger re-entered and came back to the Masters that year, you sort of shake your head and you say, my goodness, this is relevant even today. So there's a lot there. It details my relationship with some wonderful chapters on Arnold. Arnold Palmer co-founded the Golf Channel. There's Jack Nicklaus, the very first chapter, and you see these great champions, these legendary figures in really human ways, and small sometimes. They're, Jack and the Giraffe is just a moment, but very funny. Jack on the Fly, shows you they're just regular people. So it puts these people on display in some ways profound, in other ways in small ways. Covers a lot of ground, and we do get to the modern players. There's a chapter, obviously, on Rory winning the 25 Masters, and we do that through the lens of how did we experience it covering the tournament on Live From. I kind of present my notes. I keep running notes when I cover a tournament, do Live From. So it's my running notes from Saturday and Sunday of that Masters, which I think I'm comfortable saying it's right there with 86. Jack in 86 had been my all-time favorite major, and this was right there. I mean, we could have that conversation because I've never experienced the Sunday with that much tension as I did in 25. And Jack didn't need it in 86. His legacy was already secure. Rory needed it in 2025 because there were only two outcomes here. One was he's the new mayor of Normanville. It's infamy, and the other is immortality. It was there was no in between, and you felt that on that Sunday. And so I also write about Bryson and John Rahm and Tommy Fleetwood and Scotty Scheffler and Brooks Koepka, it's all in there. It's kind of a spicy gumbo. Got a little bit of everything in there, but I think it's good fun.
There's kind of this there's this old saying about, don't meet your heroes, you'll be disappointed. Obviously you've had the chance to do that, right, with Jack and Arnie. My question is more though about spanning generations, right? Those are the heroes, those are my heroes. I guess Tiger to an extent, although we're pretty similar in age. But now you've got another generation. You've talked about the kind of current crop. How does your opinion or your thought about those players differ from your views on perhaps Tiger, who's that through line through your Golf Channel career, versus Arnie, Jack, Gary Player, whoever from that generation that you weren't covering directly at the peak of their powers?
It's a good question. These are vastly different times. I think we know that. And I would start with the scrutiny is just so much more intense now. And I think I was looking at in the run up to the U.S. Open at Shinnecock. I went back and looked at the 1986 U.S. Open, won by Raymond Floyd. And it was oozing charisma. It was Greg Norman, Lee Trevino, Payne Stewart, Raymond Floyd, men of that ilk. And there seemed to be, original, authentic characters. And then I asked myself, well, why might that be? And I think because they didn't have the intense scrutiny that players today face, they were free to be themselves. They weren't being judged on what they wore, how they hugged their girlfriend. It wasn't a referendum put out every 8 minutes as there is today. So while the rewards are certainly greater for the athlete today, thanks to, in part, the work done by Floyd and people of that generation, and Nicklaus and obviously Palmer, rewards are greater. I think the pressure and the scrutiny are much more intense than they've ever been. And I think it's trickier for players to navigate that now. And so, but still, in the end, shooting 67 is today what it was then. I know equipment's improved and strength and training are better, but it's still a hard job to shoot 67 and to stay out on that tour.
Do you think the likes of Raymond Floyd, Weiskopf, guys of that, maybe of that generation, would handle the scrutiny of today as well, or in the same way as a Rory or Scotty does?
Yeah, now? I mean, it's hard to know. I mean, that would be difficult to answer, Ryan. You just don't know. But
yeah, I mean, I find it very fascinating that you have all of these. I mean, you have so many great stories from those players in that generation, just little bits and pieces, and that stuff would have turned into fodder now that would be in 30-second clips instead of kind of long arcing stories.
What Arnold would meet with the press, Jack would meet with the press after a round. Jack famously, if I'm not mistaken, did kind of a year-end gathering of, a handful of media members. Ask me whatever you want. They weren't in a position, where they were asked about their swing at every stop the way Jordan Spieth might be. They weren't being filmed. It wasn't, phones up everywhere, everywhere they go.
Yeah.
So again, they, didn't have to be so self-conscious. Fame is a beast right now. And I think it's a lot to handle for young athletes to have the kind of money, land on them in the way that it does so quickly and at such volume at such a young age. I think that's a part of it. That sounds, I go like, oh, that's a terrible thing. Who wouldn't want to have that kind of money? But I think you understand what I'm saying. It's a lot to deal with, to process in a way that I just don't think that previous generation had to deal with.
To that end, is there maybe a worry about with the increase how the sport's getting younger? We've guys coming off a PGA Tour, being successful almost immediately, and with the money available now, that, like you said, that you can fall into $20 million one morning, and we never really had that in the sport, outside of a couple guys, namely Tiger, probably Rory, right out the gate. Is there a danger in that we see kind of the players not manage those finances and opportunities as well because of their youth? Kind of similar to stories you might hear about in the NFL or the NBA of players who just happen on money so quickly and they're not prepared to manage it or deal with it.
Yeah, I mean, I think they probably all have pretty good advisors, although you could argue that the advice given to some players who left the tour to go to live may have been questionable. They traded legacy for money. Is that the best advice? Business decision. Maybe it worked for them. Who could say? I think the big, potential roadblock with all the money is that it blunts your hunger. Trevino always said, a dog don't hunt unless it's hungry. If you're sitting inside of 9,000 square feet with your feet kicked up, overlooking the intercoastal in South Florida, and it's 92 degrees, how likely are you to go bang balls if Alabama is playing Tennessee in football on Saturday afternoon? I don't know. Tom Watson said, money corrupts desire. So I think that's probably the biggest hurdle with the quick wealth arriving so suddenly as it does. Is, do you get satisfied? And what are you chasing? You chasing greatness and legacy, or you want comfort? And it's a hard life out there, and it's incredibly competitive. I mean, they're coming in waves. Guys who hit it 340, 350, and someone somewhere is working at it. You rest assured, in some spot in the world, in South Korea or South Africa or Australia, somebody is digging it out of the dirt and about to pass you if you're not getting after it. So I think that's probably the biggest issue with great wealth. Yeah,
it has to be really, jarring after probably coming to the professional rank, coming to the PGA Tour ranks for a PGA Tour guy. I'm thinking Ben James, perhaps, or Jackson Quaven, guys that were clearly the best at their level, and then go and see the very next week you're along 100 guys who are probably as good as you, if not a little better than you in some way.
Yeah, and nobody bats an eye out there. I mean, they are hardened professionals, and you show up. Oh, he went to Vanderbilt. Oh, this one went to Auburn and was number one in the world. So what? It's ruthless out there, and there's a long list of even U.S. amateur champions who haven't made it. Go back to David Gossett and Nick Flanagan, and more recently Sam Bennett. I'm not saying he won't or can't make it, but it's brutal out there.
Yeah, Sam Bennett in particular. I mean, he was on the precipice of a PGA Tour card at French Lick, and
from that standpoint, Ryan, I do think it's more competitive than it has ever been, simply because the game has opened up to more parts of the world. It's not that they didn't come from Australia. There's obviously a strong case to be made that there were better players 40, 50, 60 years ago from Australia than there are today. That's a subject for another time. Maybe the President's Cup in Chicago later this year, we can get into that. But they're coming, from all parts of the world now. I mean, Europe is flush with good players coming from Scandinavian countries, Christopher Wrighton, Victor Hovland, keep going. And the pathways from Europe, from Asia now, the advent of these great amateur events has spurred growth. Latin America Amateur Championship, Asia Pacific Amateur Championship. The college game is like a tour unto itself. So it's harder to stay out there, harder to make it, more places to cut your teeth now than there have ever been. We tend to focus solely on the PGA Tour, but there are tours all over the world now where you can learn, begin to master the fine art of putting a 72-hole score together. So more talent, more competition, but more places to do it than at any point in history.
Yeah, I mean, who would have known the name Juraj Premlaw a month and a half ago, and then he wins by 2 touchdowns in Spain on the DP World Tour? I didn't even know he was alive, and now I know he can win a golf tournament at basically 30 under, and no one get halfway to him. That's if that doesn't tell you how deep the talent pool is, I don't know what tells you.
Yeah, I don't know what I've often wondered what the number is. Do we have 500 guys right now or more who can wake up on any given day and shoot 65?
Yeah. The
tournament conditions are obviously different than just shooting 65 with your buddies, but probably, is it 500, in a tournament condition somewhere, could shoot 65? Has to be.
Yeah, then you could throw into a PGA Tour kind of setup, 3 paces from the edge and put up that kind of number. I think that's probably about right. Mm-hmm. Less than 1,000 at least.
Yeah.
And that puts you in a super, super small community of people, which, you said earlier, it is ruthless, but is there a weird camaraderie of despite the ruthlessness of knowing you're in this super small community of talented people?
Probably. But I know these professionals, they tend to be really hard on themselves. They beat themselves up. Could have done more, should have done more. It's the Sean McKeel idea. Just have never done enough. And I remember a friend of mine, he remained nameless, tour pro. He's not out there anymore. And he was a fringe guy, but he was always, in that 125 to 150 category. And he was negative. He just didn't feel as though he belonged, that he wasn't good enough. And I used to sit to him and say, "Bud, do you understand that you are one of the 125 to 50, 100 best at this sport in the world?
Yeah,
that's a great achievement." And he could never see it that way. And that's what's so brutal about it. Take the best golfer at your club, pretty big deal. Expand it out from there. Best golfer in your city, best golfer in your county, best golfer in your state, best golfer in your country. You show up on that tour, the PGA Tour, and it's big deal. And it's a whole new ball game. And suddenly you don't feel like the man. You turn to your left and turn to your right, and there are guys, punishing 3 irons, 245 yards on a rope, on a line. And it can be humbling. And so why it still comes down to talent, yes, but it's how they think about the game, how they think about themselves, that I think separates players ultimately.
I feel like that's probably the most brutal lesson of tour golf at that height, is that the talent doesn't, the physical gift doesn't necessarily matter as much anymore. It's the stuff that no one ever prepared you for, to figure out what your fortitude is to handle all the other stuff that no one tells you about and no one can coach you on.
Yeah, look, I mean, I don't want to dismiss the physical technical side of the equation. It's crucial. That's why you see guys, if they're walking, into Morgan Stanley on Wall Street with the little briefcase with the TrackMan and the devices that they walk around with. Speed matters. Technique matters. Owning what you do, in the end, ultimately matters. But there are a lot of rabbit holes that guys can chase, and they'll get lost and never come out of it. So that's where the belief comes into play. There's always a Svengali around every corner, on every range, at every tour event. And if you've missed 2 cuts in a row, it would be easy to look to your left and go, hey, I need a look. I need some help. And next thing you know, you're off, in a new tangent. It has wrecked guys out there. So that's where you come back to that belief. Do you own what you do? Do you have total conviction in what you're doing? Can you survive without going down the rabbit hole? Can you handle 2 bad weeks in a row without, chasing something? That's a difference maker. That mentality, that strength, that conviction, that's what it takes.
I'm going to kind of turn that question onto you a little bit then. You've seen Golf Channel from basically beginning to present state. What keeps you engaged in golf? What still fascinates you about golf, having seen so many different great players and so many different things happen in this sport over your tenure at Golf Channel?
I think, day to day at a tournament, it is the pursuit of excellence. To be able to just kind of draft off that, to be in the show that is professional sport, and in this case PGA Tour golf, energizes me, and it's not a cliche to say it that way, the pursuit of excellence, because that's what it takes in that league. Like 70 is not quite good enough. I mean, you and I know how hard the sport is. So 67 is pursuing excellence. And that happens every single day that we're out there. They are chasing excellence. So that environment is energizing, it's elevated, and it's buzzy. And I love being a part of that, and getting to make and shape commentary around what we're seeing. A game that I know so many people love and are fascinated by and play and understand in ways that fans in other sports don't think fully do, because they don't put the helmet and pads on the way they do in the NFL, and they're not playing Major League Baseball. They are playing the sport of golf. They are familiar. Maybe they played Shinnecock Hills or Royal Birkdale or St. Andrews. And so that raises the bar for us. I think we have an intelligent audience that we never try to insult. So, yeah, I mean, I think that's probably it in a nutshell. And I get to do it with Brandel and Paul and Todd and Matt Hegarty, who's our lead producer, and Jeff Fabian and Chloe Pistorius. And these people who are committed to the game. They love the sport. They understand it. They don't cheat it. And they're serious about it. And, yesterday I was on our live from call, pre the Open Championship, and it was just, it was just a great 2 hours. And we just, all right, what do we think about Rory? How do we want to treat Rory? What are we doing with Tommy? Where's Scotty at? And I get to do this for a living. I'm still as fired up as day one, because I love the game, and I love, the way I'm immersed in it. I don't play it as much as I did before I had this job 30 years ago. Every now and then, but I'm immersed in it in a different way and love it no less. And fortunate to be able to do it alongside Brandon and Paul, who in their own way are chasing excellence every single day. There's not a day that goes by that they don't want to be better. And they're both tireless workers, good human beings, funny, spirited. We're lucky we have a great environment. It's loose. It's a phenomenal hang. And so it doesn't seem like work. It just the travel and all of that, the deadlines, bring their own pressures. But I absolutely still, and I suspect always will, love it.
Well, Rich, thank you so much for coming on and talking with us. I'm really happy that the book is doing very well.
Thank you.
Just to reiterate for everybody, it's Aren't You That Golf Guy? Dog Legs and Detours from a Life in the Game. You apparently sold out on Amazon, so it might not be there today.
When you hear that, that's a good time to get out. Hank is on the cover of the book with me, and that's Hank weighing in at the moment.
There's Hank on the cover. That's who you hear. Thank you, Rich. I appreciate it.
See you, pal.